You're listening to Graphic Novel Explorers Club podcast, an audio book club.
Greetings, explorers. I'm one of your hosts, Johnny, joined by
Dennis
and no Aubrey. Today we are discussing She-Hulk Law and Disorder by writer Charles Soule and artists Javier Pulido and Ron Wimberly. We hope you've read today's title because all three of us have read the book, so beware, spoilers ahead. Become an official explorer by joining our Patreon group. Explorers get early access to episodes, specials, polls, discussions, and other extras. Graphic Novel Explorers Club is available wherever fine podcasts are found, including YouTube, so be sure to subscribe and leave a review. That's right, explorers. Today we're looking at She-Hulk Law and Disorder, which covers books 1 through 6 of this particular run by Charles Soule. This was published by Marvel around 2014, I believe. And the artists are Javier Pulido, who covers books 1 through 4, and Ron Wimberly, who covers books 5 through 6. And they both have very distinct artistic styles.
Yeah, I don't know where I've seen Javier's work before. It seems so familiar, but it really was eye-catching. It seemed like, I don't know, like a rock album, something like that.
It's like strangely flat, but not. It's a weird, of the two, I preferred Ron's work more, but Javier's was definitely unique.
I loved Javier's work. This is one of the rare times where I paused before I dove into the book and started just flipping through and looking through the illustrations. I just liked the character designs. It was interesting how he laid out the panels. And yeah, I just really liked the work a lot.
Yeah, it was good. All the characters had sort of wide set eyes. Yeah, I'm curious where I should have looked up where I've seen his work, but it looked very familiar.
Well, and the noses were so distinct. Like even She-Hulk, who's normally portrayed as, your typical, basically white lady, I guess you would say, her nose was just unique. I don't know. It just added a lot of character to everything.
I'm curious how, I can't think of the character's name, the princess from the Shrek cartoons, if that had any influence on later She-Hulk designs, because I've always seen like the 80s runs of She-Hulk. She was basically sex pot,
right? Green
She-Hulk, and the take on this was she was more athletic, like thicker, athletic, almost like a female UFC fighter.
Right.
know?
I definitely think they started to pivot towards that as opposed to just a much taller Victoria's Secret model.
Yeah. Our artists, the color artists are Munsta Vicente, Rico Renzi, and Ron Wimberly. And then the letter is VC's Clayton Cowles.
Well, the way they laid out the credits was a bit confusing for me because the artists were actually credited as storytellers.
Yeah.
So I wasn't sure, like, wait, are these writers? I wasn't sure at first when I was looking at the credits what the heck the difference between the writer and a storyteller was. And then I looked it up and I was like, well, these are clearly the artists. So
yeah. I like the way the book was introed. It kind of got you up to speed really fast on who Jennifer Walters is, aka She-Hulk, and how she got her powers. She was shot by some gangsters, some criminals, survived the attack by getting a transfusion from her cousin, Bruce Banner, and then his gamma radiated blood ended up turning her into She-Hulk, but she has more control over herself.
For sure. Well, I'll be honest. I mean, I only know, a little bit about She-Hulk in terms of what she does for a profession, how she operates. Most of the time, I haven't actually collected the She-Hulk comics, so I haven't delved into how she controls it. But yeah, she definitely is portrayed in everything as obviously more in control. She doesn't have the roid rage that the Hulk does. She's able to be a lawyer at the same time as being She-Hulk.
And it's like the in-game Hulk. I forget what they call the in-game Hulk. Is much more like this comic book She-Hulk.
Right.
Where it's the brawn and the brain combined.
Exactly.
And so this story concerns Jennifer Walters' journey into starting her own law firm and representing her first client, Christophe Bernard, who's the son of Dr. Doom. And then the second story is about She-Hulk, along with several other heroes and villains as defendants in a lawsuit that they have no memory of what caused the lawsuit.
Yeah, I was really surprised by the formats of the story. It really is more about the lawyering and honestly, it works really well. Like, I wasn't sure how that would translate in terms of the comic. I thought it would be like watching Law and Order, and there would just be panels and panels of just objection. And that might work for a video game in some cases.
What video game are you talking about?
Oh, Phoenix Wright, Attorney at Law. That's a Nintendo game. They actually have it for like all systems now, and you're actually investigating and you're in the court for some parts of it. But I wasn't sure how this would play out in terms of the comic, but it was great. I mean, there was very few action segments, and I wasn't missing them necessarily. I thought I was thoroughly invested in the tone of the comic and the story. Them investigating whatever case they happen to be on, and doing the court stuff. It was just fun. It's fun to see this side of
the superhero world.
Right. It's like Damage Control. There was a comic, and they're starting to bring that back into the MCU, but there was a comic back in the 90s that was basically the company run by Tony Stark that is in charge of cleaning up the superhero messes. So after everyone punches through buildings, they're the ones who help repair the buildings, everything like that. It's kind of a scam if you think about it, because Tony Stark was profiting from carnage that he created in some ways. But anyway, I like that kind of aspect where it's like an unusual side of the superhero world that you don't think about. And once again, I think we've talked about this before when we talked about Falcon and the Winter Soldier. But things like their salary, how much a superhero makes, those sort of things are fascinating to me when you try to apply some real world problems. And you realize, oh yeah, these guys don't have an unlimited bank account. They either have to have a second job. It's not their secret identity. It's their ability to work so that they can actually afford to do what they do.
Yeah.
But, once again, you have to suspend belief. I'm not trying to apply all sorts of real world problems and wonder why Tony Stark isn't fixing them.
But if you compare DC to Marvel's always been much more about the real world issues that their characters have to deal with, like Spider-Man. He had to get a job as a photographer, to support his, he had to go out and get a regular job. He wasn't just like,
right. I mean, the whole thing with him selling photos of himself were because he needed the money.
Yeah. So, but segue back to what you were saying about the action. What action scenes there were, you almost see what led up, like them leading into the fight. And then the aftermath of the fight. There's very little of the actual fight in this story. It was, it was just like, okay, let's just get through the fight and move on to like what she's actually having to deal with, which I thought was really refreshing.
Well, and then the humor in the fights was great, particularly the AIM fight where there's two AIM soldiers and they're deciding whether or not they want to fight She-Hulk and Hellcat. And
she uses her ability to argue.
Right.
To de-escalate them to not just to give up.
Well, and it's funny, they want to fight because they want to basically promote and they want to make more money.
Yeah.
So they figure this would help them out. It's not some sort of blind cult like attitude. Oh, I have to do this for, my super powerful boss, like you usually see in a cartoon. It's like, no, they have a life, they have kids. One of them has kids. And so he's like, yeah, this is going to be my big shot to get a promotion, essentially, which is like, that makes sense.
To not be a grunt.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was great. So our characters in this story are Jennifer Walters, attorney at law, and the She-Hulk. Holly Harrow, a widow who claims her deceased husband's work was stolen by Stark Industries, which it turns out it was. And then Sharon King, Jennifer's landlord, who exclusively rents to metahumans and is a retired mutant, I guess, or lost her mutant abilities.
Yeah, I didn't really look into it much if she appeared in the comics before. It didn't register on my radar. But what the incident she's referring to is the House of M, which is when Scarlet Witch changed the whole world. And when it switched back, there were still a lot less mutants in the world itself.
And then Angie Wang, Jennifer's paralegal or secretary, who seems to have some sort of extrasensory abilities. Hey, her Angie's pet capuchin monkey, who, excuse me, lost my voice there, who seems to have like a restorative vomit or something.
Yeah, to bring you back to life.
Yeah, it brings Angie back to life at some point, or heals her through stink breath or vomit, something. Patsy Walker, aka Hellcat, She-Hulk's metahuman friend, who I guess was in the Jessica Jones.
Yeah, she was
TV
in
show?
some of those Netflix shows. She was retired from being a superhero, but then came back in
this
and
story.
In the Netflix shows. But yeah, I don't know
she
much
was
about
a
her.
superhero. I don't remember that.
Yeah, she was. She just didn't want to. She wanted to like leave that life behind, I think.
Oh, I totally forgot that.
But yeah, honestly, I don't remember a whole lot of Hellcat in the not MCU, in the Marvel comic universe. I know of her, and I knew that she didn't really have. I don't think she even had really powers. I think
not
she's
still the third season, and then she went bad or something like that. I don't
Right.
remember. It's been years since I've seen that.
But in terms of the comics, I don't know a whole lot about her beyond like her powers. I mean, her outfit and such. But I like the portrayal of her. She felt very grounded.
Yeah, Christoph Renaud, the son of Victor Von Doom, and then George Sawitz, who's the plaintiff in the lawsuit that's in the second half of the story, and then Kevin Trench, aka Nightwatch.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get other character like guest appearances from Tony Stark, Matt Murdock, the Shocker, and Tigra, which is like looks like Wonder Woman's nemesis.
Yeah, no, she's a common Avenger. I've seen her before.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah.
This was a really fun story. I went into it not expecting much. I'm on record as saying I'm not a big fan of capes and cowls, but this was a lot of fun. I had a good time reading the story.
You really felt these people were real. Like even Tony Stark, Matt Murdock, they felt more dimensional, and they weren't the brooding versions you sometimes see in the comics. They were just fun and real, and it was just very interesting. You got aspects of their real life. In terms of Tony Stark's, you really do understand, like, look, I'm out here saving the world and being a billionaire. I don't have time to deal with a million lawsuits, which he would have to deal with. So he has a legal person who basically acts for him, and he has a bunch of automated processes, including his own Stark bots, to stop anyone who's been recognized as trying to do a lawsuit against him. So it all makes sense. And then at this point, I guess like I said, I don't remember what was happening in the Marvel universe at this very particular time period, but I guess Matt Murdock was disbarred from the New York bar, and so he's practicing in San Francisco now. So
which was a whole thing. So I was like, what? Because people don't know that he's the Daredevil for the most part, right? Unless you're like another superhero.
Right.
So Matt Murdock as himself, as a blind man, is at the top of the Golden Gate Bridge with She-Hulk.
Right.
And they're hanging out, and he's not just like sitting there chatting with her. He's like showing off. He's
he's doing his moves.
Yeah, he's like standing at the top of the Golden Gate Bridge in his civilian clothes, basically. And then as they walk down the tension wire of the bridge, and then they get off. They're standing there at the bottom where pedestrians and cars are going by, and he's like showing off more. And I was like, wait, aren't you supposed to be hiding your identity? It's clearly. Now I'd be like, oh, look at that guy. He must be a superhero.
Maybe by this time he didn't have a secret identity, because you have a really good point. He's one of the few that did have a secret identity. For the most part, Marvel characters are actually well known. Like Power Man, everyone knows his face. Everyone knows his identity. Yeah. Reed Richards, they know he's Mr. Fantastic. Tony Stark being Iron Man is not a secret and hasn't been for the longest time, since the 80s. Maybe at this point he did ditch the secret identity.
But then then he's like, hey, do you want to go out? And she's like, yeah. And then they get dressed up and then go out and fight crime, which was another interesting thing, was all the bad guys that they're fighting that they show are all minorities. They're like Asian and Black people. So I was like, all right, I wonder who drew that.
Oh, that's a good point. I didn't even pick up on that. That's a good one.
Oh, right. Okay. All right.
I did like that first case where she was trying to help that widow, because at first I thought, oh, this is one of Tony Stark's scientists that he took all the info from or something like that. No, it's actually a bad guy. He was a minor supervillain So you're thinking, well, I don't want to side with this guy, but he has a family. So once again, it shows that multi-dimensional aspect where it's like, yeah, he was a supervillain, but he also had a family to feed, and he had a legitimate case. Just because he's a bad guy doesn't mean you can just take his intellectual property.
Yeah. And that was She-Hulk's point, was like, he still needs to be, he has legal rights too, even though he's a bad guy. So that's why she represented him. And it turned out one of Tony Stark's divisions was run by this POS who ended up actually stealing this repulsor technology. And so Tony ended up, I'm about to sneeze. Maybe. I thought I was about to sneeze, everyone. So basically goes to Tony and says, look, let's not, instead of tying this up in court, just do the right thing and give the lady her money. And then he winds up doing the right thing and settling. So one thing that I found interesting was she would occasionally go back to her regular human form.
Right.
But for most of the comic run, she's either like this in-between stage or she's like hulks out.
Yeah, I don't know exactly her rationale for going back and forth, because it seems like she can do it at will. That's what I understood for years, that she can switch at will.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know why sometimes she's in Hulk form, just default being the lawyer, but then wants to be human. Like I never understood that part of the character. But yeah, the lore is that she can switch at will. And I've seen different shots of the comic where she's a lawyer as just her normal self, and then sometimes she just wants to be She-Hulk. I don't know if it's like a makeup thing where she's like, that's what she wants to look like today.
Because when she goes in the second story of the three in this issue or in this trade, she's representing Dr. Doom's son. I think it's his adopted son or something like that, Christophe Bernard, who is seeking asylum in the United States. What's the Doom's land? What's his?
Oh God, I always forget. I can't pronounce Latveria. I don't remember.
Astoria. So he's seeking asylum in the United States because when Dr. Doom dies, Christoph is the heir apparent to take over the country, and he doesn't want to do it. And that's her argument in court is he's going to be forced into something that he doesn't want to do. And if he doesn't do it, then they'll kill him. So that gets him asylum. But at that time, Doom, when they're in court, Doom comes in and steals his adult son back. And then she goes back into her regular human form to infiltrate the country to try and get him out. So I was like, oh, so she can go back to her form. She
just chooses not to.
She's more comfortable as like semi She-Hulk.
Right. Well, I would say that's full She-Hulk. It's just she's not angry She-Hulk is what I would say.
Okay. So angry She-Hulk is the one where she like rips out of her gear.
Yeah, exactly. She's just bulking up because she's like angry. Yeah.
And I like her costume. She's got like a glow WWF wrestling boots on. I was like, oh, that's cool. I like that.
And I would say, they did their research in terms of the illustrator. They definitely put her in some fashionable outfits in terms of like her lawyer dress. She looks, very professional.
Yeah, that's what's funny. When she's She-Hulk, she still has like professional lawyer clothes. Like I'm going to court, business suits on. No, this was a good book. I've been pleasantly surprised with some of the Marvel stuff we've read this season.
Yeah, they definitely spread their wings on this one and allowed for a good amount of humor, a lot of, really giving some depth to the characters. Like one of my favorite scenes is when these demon-like things attack her office. And her landlord's like, look, we have to raise your rent. There's in your clause, it says like, if you're responsible for a direct attack because the building has other metahumans, then, your insurance to cover you increases. So we have to increase your rent. And for a brief moment, she drops into super lawyer mode. Yep. Well, actually, I checked your contract, et cetera, et cetera. And then she realizes,
I don't need to do this.
I don't need to be that kind of jerk.
Yeah.
And then she drops it. And like, of course.
I had written down in my notes, that was my favorite part of the book too, which is not a superhero thing. That's just being a decent human being thing.
But it's interesting because, I've known a lot of lawyers in my time, and some are able to turn it off and some are not. So that was interesting to see, because clearly this person has actually dealt with lawyers or talked to them, because the whole thing with billing time, all that other stuff.
So I did the math on that. So the story starts off with her working for this law firm that she thinks she's about to be made partner, which it sounds like she was only there for like a year. I'm like, you don't make partner for after a year. So I think,
but you do if you do that many billable hours.
I don't think so. I don't think you make partner that quick. I think, from my understanding, you're usually there for a few years before they make you a partner, at least several years. So she quotes that in her year of work, she did 3,000 hours of billable work. So that breaks down to about, she's working about 62.5 hours per week. So she's working 5 days a week. She's doing about 12 hours a day. I was like, man, She-Hulk was going to burn out.
Well, on top of her superhero work.
Yeah, which turns out that's why they hired her. The law firm thought that she was going to get all these rich superheroes like Tony Stark and Richard Reed, become clients of the law firm. And that's why they let go of her. So, there was an interesting thing. She loses her cool. It breaks a table, and then they start bad mouthing her in the community. But it turns out all these superheroes wind up showing up at the end of the trade book, because they figure out, oh yeah, we do need legal representation. So
yeah, the other scene that I really, really loved was her sitting down with Shocker. And, he talks about, like, we don't mess with the Hulks, it doesn't matter. And he lists off the different colors, because there have been different color ones. And at this time, there's like at least maybe one or two different red ones, including our red She-Hulk, who's totally different. And then he mentions Thor. And then I like, there is the mighty Thor, the female Thor, but he groups all basically Asgardians as Thor, which I think is like, if you were that street level of a person, you don't care about whatever fancy title or name. It's just like, he's Asgardian, he's a Thor.
He even throws Beta Ray Bill in there.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, well, not exactly. They're not Thors exactly. And he's like, yeah, whatever. I don't
care.
They beat me up. I don't care.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that was a funny part in the book. So.
Oh, no, and she brings up a point that we've brought up before, where it's like, Shocker, you build all of your equipment. If you just applied that intelligence towards some other career,
you could sell these things.
Yeah, exactly.
So kind of turning back to the art, the art in issues 5 and 6 felt really influenced by Aeon Flux to me. Like, it just,
I was going to say the same thing. The angles,
weird, the
elongated.
Angles, everything was elongated. The arms were, you could tell it was like an extreme camera shot. So like an arm would look really long. Right. I was like, this just feels really influenced by Aeon Flux. I realized too, this book was from around the era of when Miss Marvel was published. So it seems like there was a good push from Marvel to like switch up how things were kind of being done, and just different art styles, like unique, different art styles that weren't comic booky per se, of, just like extremely big muscles and just ripped dudes, and costumes that were like an appropriate costume you would wear. Like, I'm not going to wear a G-string costume to go fight, where I'm going to be knocking down buildings and shit. It's like, Miss Marvel wore an appropriate costume for her age and her beliefs. She-Hulk wore stuff that was appropriate for court, and then the stuff she wore as to go out and fight was much more, it was spandexy, but it was like appropriate for like, okay, I need combat boots because I might be stepping on stuff,
Right.
So I don't know. I kind of, maybe I've softened a little bit on my views on Capes and Cowles from this era, this like mid 2010, 2020 run.
I tell you though, having the Marvel online service and looking through some old runs, I've read some comics from the 90s, and I actually dropped out of comics a little bit in the 90s, and it's kind of a shock to see some of the artwork from that time period. Some of it's just plain not good. And and they really, people joke about it, but there really it was almost like a parody of a parody, with like extreme like muscles and weird bulky equipment and gear and just lots of straps. It's just bizarre.
Giant bosoms with barely any clothes on.
But not even like semi-realistic bosoms. Like the 80s
No,
had some
that's
of
what
that.
I mean. Like
Yeah.
gigantic fake pornographic boobs.
Was it? It's just like really bad art. Like I don't
Yeah.
even know how. Well, I don't know.
Well, we should have said this at the beginning of the episode. I that's my fault for not saying that. But this is our last episode of the season. We'll be back in October with our annual Halloween special, and then we'll be back in December with our annual holiday episode, and then we'll be back in the new next year. Can't even talk. Next year, we'll be back next year with a brand new season. We'll see how I feel. I did school while trying to run my business this year, and I got burned out on everything. So I had to take a good portion of what would have been our normal season. And we had some major technical issues where we lost like several episodes that we had pre-recorded. So hopefully I need a couple of weeks to recoup and just rest from running the show, because there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that you guys don't know about. So maybe we'll come back early with more of the Week in Geeks. Those seem to be popular, so maybe we'll bring those back. But yeah,
or we'll do a year in geek or a decade in geek.
Yeah. Maybe we can look back. Yeah, maybe we could time travel back to like 91 in geek, 92 in geek, 93 in geek, something like that. But yeah, just thanks for listening. We really appreciate it. And where can people follow this podcast if they want to do that, Dennis?
Yeah, you could find us on Twitter and Insta at GN Explorers Club.
Thanks. Please check out our Patreon. We would really appreciate your support for the podcast. We do this for free. It cuts into Dennis is very busy. Aubrey's very busy. I'm very busy. Dennis has kids on top of it, which is I don't know how he can do that, but but yeah, we would appreciate your support on Patreon if you can do that. But yeah, thanks for listening, and we'll see you in a couple months.
Bye.
Bye.